Welcome, another episode of Hold My Cutter coming your way here at Burned by Rocky Patel down the road from PNC Park. Our special guest, Kent Tekulve, who pitched in relief more times than any other National League pitcher. Any in baseball history. And he recommended the number 6, Rocky Patel, which we are enjoying now with a 95 rating. 90, that's about how hard Teak threw in the day.
One might wish.
Well, whatever. Medium-bodied cigar wrapped in stunning Honduran Corojo leaf, offering a balanced blend of sweetness and pepper that appeals to both mild and medium to full-bodied smokers alike. And our guests here at Burned by Rocky Patel received gift cards from the great David Allen. David Allen Clothing. And those gift cards allow you the opportunity to check out Pittsburgh's premier men's custom suit and custom clothing experts. Schedule a free fitting with a stylist at our lounge in Mount Lebanon. And we also want to thank, as always, the great Ara Katz from Berkshire Hathaway. Yes, Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Ask Ara Katz at Ask Ara. That's A-R-A-H, Katz, K-A-T-Z. Go to AskAraKatz.com. Buying or selling a home, nobody better than Eric Katz. And nobody better as a reliever, and became a longtime color analyst. After your days with the Philadelphia Phillies, previous episode, Kent Tekulve, we talked about your days pitching, but we didn't get into yet the opportunity to be a broadcaster. When you were pitching, when you were playing, did you think down the road, like McHenry, when McHenry first came into the big leagues, one of the first things he said was, I'm going to be a top podcaster. I'm going to be a pre- and post-game.
Yep.
Were you like that?
Yeah, I was absolutely like that. I had no idea.
No idea.
Amen.
No idea.
I had no thoughts at all. In fact, the way it happened, I had retired finally after at the age of 42. Came back, did a little PR work.
At the young age of 42.
At the young age of 42.
I'm not 40.
I was a worn
I'm not even
out
40
42.
yet. That's incredible.
I was a worn out 42.
When did you think about, McHenry, when did you think about it, about broadcasting? How old were you?
Never. I didn't. I was terrified to do it because I had learning disabilities growing up. I'm sure everybody's heard that story, but yeah, I got an opportunity when Teak was here. So
that's okay.
We'll get into it.
All
But
right.
yeah, it's one of those things that's really neat. It's because Teak's such a great guy. I'm sure that's how the door opened.
Well, I'll tell you what, the door opened accidentally for me.
You didn't kick it in?
He did.
I was at home. I had done some PR work for the Pirates, just working around the ballpark, going around thanking people, stuff like that, doing a few speeches here or there or whatever.
You sound like a politician.
The year after I retired, yeah,
kind of.
Yeah, kissing babies, doing the whole thing. And all of a sudden, my second year, I'm still doing the same thing, or I'm getting ready to do the same thing. And the season has just started. About 2 weeks into the season, the Phillies fired their manager and named Jim Fregosi their new manager. Well, Jim Fregosi had been working in the front office as a consultant and a bunch of other stuff. And one of the things he was doing was they had a package on Sports Channel that they called, it was a 25-game package. It was their smallest TV package. It was just select games. And they spread them out over the course of the whole year. Well, Fregosi gets the manager's job. So he can't be the analyst on this TV package anymore in the middle of April.
Unbelievable.
So they've got a whole season full of almost 20, well, it was a 25-game package. I think he did one. And it was like a miserable long 14-inning game in the cold at Shea Stadium. And he was miserable about it. He told me the story later. But so the Phillies decided, let's go back through all the guys we've had over the years and just anybody that we think might be good, bring each one of them in for 3, 4, 5 games during the course of the season, and we'll fill that spot over the course of this year just to finish out the schedule, and then next year we'll figure out what we're going to do with it. Well, I happen to be, for some reason, who spent probably the least amount of time out of anybody in Philadelphia as a player. One of the guys that they called, they called me, it was Mike Schmidt, it was Greg Gross, Jake Johnstone, Gary Maddox, guys with personalities they thought could do a little speaking. So I ended up doing 5 games. I mean, and literally how much preparation I had for it. I got a call on a Tuesday saying, would you even think about it? Have you ever thought about broadcasting? No, not really. Says, well, explain to me what happened. Says, well, this was on a Tuesday. Says, well, would you be interested? I said, I'd try it. I don't know if I'll be any good at it or not, but I'll try it. Says, well, okay, get a plane tomorrow, fly to Montreal. You're doing the game Thursday night. I says, well, don't you, do we need to have a meeting or talk? No, don't worry about it. We'll just figure it out as we go.
Good luck.
So literally, that's how I got into broadcasting is, show up on Thursday and we'll figure out what's going to happen. So I get there on Thursday. I'm working with Andy Musser. I'll sit down with Ray Tipton, the producer, before the game. We're having the dinner. And fortunately, Fregosi and I had played together with he was here with the Pirates for a while, so I knew Jim. And some of the players on the Phillies team were still guys that I was familiar with from a couple of years ago when I was still playing. So Jim, being Jim, put together an entire lineup that night of people that I would know. He did not have any of his new guys that had come in the last 3 years.
I'm going to help out my buddy, my broadcaster, Kent
game.
Tekulve, by putting in the guys that he knows.
Sure. Yeah. Now I wonder if that's better, or if Walk making the lineup in the big leagues is better. Saying,
maybe.
I can make a better lineup than this.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Baseball's great.
Well, I'll tell you what, though. Our friendship was good before. It really bonded that night.
My gosh.
So that was my introduction to broadcasting. It ended up doing a total of 5 games over the course of the whole season. Some of them were on the road. Some of them were in Philadelphia. And it was like, it's doing 1 game a month.
Which is not easy.
And the greatest part was we had the dinner, right? We went up to the press room before we started. And it was Ray Tipton, myself, and Andy. We're sitting there. And Ray gets ready to leave, and he says, we're going to, because we used to rehearse. No, we taped the Open. We used to tape the Open. So he says, we're going to tape the Open, or we're going to tape the stand-up at, 6:50, whatever time it was, 7:05 game, 6:50. Okay. So he leaves, and he goes upstairs, or goes to the truck, or wherever he goes. And I look at Andy, and I go, Andy, I says, what's the stand-up? He says, Andy, you know Andy.
Hell yeah.
Andy being Andy, he looks at me, he goes, you stand up right next to me and answer whatever question I ask you.
Pretty simple.
I can do that. I have done that before. I can do that. And that was my introduction to broadcasting and my first lesson of what you do as a broadcaster.
Wayner calls that a skit.
We literally went by the seat of our pants through the whole 5 games that I did.
Did you work with Andy each time? Sometimes with Harry,
I
right?
worked with Andy and I worked with Chris Wheeler.
Did you ever work with Harry?
No, Harry and Richie Ashburn worked together all the time. Together. They did radio together.
Okay.
We did this was the
the package.
Third tier
okay.
TV package.
But as you went along, did you ever work with Harry?
No.
How about that?
Harry and Richie Ashburn did radio together solely by themselves for years. So
always a team. Wow.
It was just it was Chris Wheeler, it was Andy Musser Musser, Chris Wheeler most of the time, and then toward the end there were a couple other guys that came in that I was working with that were doing the play-by-play.
Now people who aren't very familiar are scrambling, like wondering how Tekulve with the Phillies. People may not realize that you didn't spend your entire career as a Pirate. Though it seems that way.
I know the first time I learned, I was like, wait, what? He had Philly in his blood?
I had 4 years of Philly in my blood.
I found out.
See, how about that trade? It was April 20th, 1985. The Pirates trade Kent Tekulve to the Philadelphia Phillies for left-handed reliever Al Holland. Did that catch you by surprise? But it certainly seemed to catch a lot of Pirate fans by surprise.
I was about 30 days old then.
30 days old.
About 30 days
young
old.
Michael McHenry.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, I just started reading.
We love that.
I was just started reading.
He does this every podcast.
Yeah.
He does this every podcast.
I do.
You treat all the guests the same.
Yeah. And his co-host. Go ahead.
Well, you guys are only what?
Old man jokes. Let's go.
I was going to say, you threw me off so much now I forgot the question.
So anyway, were you thrown off by the trade as many Pirate fans were?
Yeah, it was interesting because, number one, nobody ever gets traded at the end of April. It was like the 28th of April, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you just got out of spring training. Everybody just got their teams together. They've done whatever moves they were going to do during spring training to put their clubs together and get the season started, and then all of a sudden this trade comes up. So, yeah, I was caught completely by surprise. And I'm also a little worried because over the years, the past 10 years, with the rivalry between the Pirates and the Phillies, what it was, I was probably not the most favorite person in Philadelphia with the fans.
You've saved plenty of games against the Phillies.
If I opened the bullpen door and started walking out on the field from the left field bullpen in Philadelphia at Veterans Stadium, the boos started and they continued all the way till I got to the mound and the game started. And there were some beers thrown out of the upper deck, came down past me and everything else. So
They're just trying to share.
I'm trying to figure out exactly how this relationship is going to work out. It could have been St. Louis, that would have been different or whatever, but it was Philadelphia, and we had the reputation. So I go over there. I get there I get traded on Friday. I get there, fly over Saturday morning, we got a Saturday night game. As luck would have it, of course, Al Holland was their closer. I was our closer, so we're swapping closers, so I'm the new closer. As luck would have it, on Saturday night against the Mets, 8th inning, closing situation comes up. Here comes, phone rings, get up, get ready, phone rings, you're in. I don't know what your reaction's going to be. What's going to happen? Every time I opened that door from that left field side, it was not good. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what was going to happen when I opened up the right field side. Part of just me being me and my personality, and maybe part of what allowed me to be a closer and not get too worried about situations, I walk over to the door, and the door swung open out into the field. So I kind of eased the door open a little bit, and I stuck my head
just to see
just out of the door.
Little test.
Just to see what the reaction would be.
Peekaboo.
Peekaboo.
Yeah.
Peekaboo.
Yeah. Just let them see me a little bit at a time. I don't want to just walk out there like I usually did. Well, as it turned out, I ended up getting a standing ovation, and what I had thought all along was all the booing and all the other stuff was actually respect.
Sure.
For, being like,
100.
just like we hated their players, but we respected their players because they were so good. So we got past that part of it.
Standing O, though.
Standing O.
How about that, man?
And then, go in. Of course, I didn't ever anticipate there being a problem with the players. The players have dealt with that our whole careers. We know players have come and players have gone, and guys you played with and against have changed.
Yeah.
But, that was an interesting trade at a very strange time of the year for it to happen.
That is weird, and closer for closer, that's weird too.
Yeah,
Don't see that much anymore.
It was kind of a even swap that kind of worked out the same for everybody.
Well, it really worked out for you because you weren't around for the mess that became the end of the '85 season in Pittsburgh.
Well,
right?
they lost the stake in the ground.
I mean, yeah.
They lost the Tickaboo.
I don't think McHenry or anybody that was not around at the time can truly understand. People talk about how down at times the Pirates have been over the years in terms of the win-loss record, and they want them to win. Everybody wants them to win, but nothing can compare. You talk about rock bottom. That was rock bottom around here.
Well, actually, '85 was the beginning of it.
Yeah.
Because I ended up being fortunate getting traded at the end of April of '85, because by the end of '85, the Pirates had lost 100 games. So I was on a 100-loss season. I went to not a championship club, but surely the Philadelphia club did a lot better than what happened here in Pittsburgh. Plus, there were some other circumstances surrounding it, the myself or Al Holland trade and all that. So, the Pirates knew that the club was going to be sold at the end of the year. They were going to get rid of all the veteran players. I was going to be one of the more popular players that was not going to be done. And in another month or so, I was going to become a 10-5 player, which meant I could veto a trade. And everybody knew how I felt about being in Pittsburgh, and I would have vetoed the trade. And then they couldn't have made the trade. And
it's ruthless.
So the Pirates, if they were going to unload and purge
yes.
after the '85 season, needed to get rid of me. And doing it this way They got rid of me before we got to the 5 and 10. And I could veto the trade.
Before you were
and the new ownership group didn't have to do it. So that was on the Pirate end. On the opposite side of the equation, Al Holland was basically, he was very similar to me. I mean, we were both in the same roles. We were both making about the same amount of money. I had a few more years left on my contract. His contract was going to expire at the end of the year. So he comes over here. Well, what wasn't known then that is known now, and I think it was known probably by the Philadelphia people with the Philadelphia club, was that Al Holland was going to be implicated in the drug trial at the end of the season. And the Phillies, being a very PR conscious organization, didn't want to be involved in that, him being part of their roster when that happened. So that was kind of the impetus for them to move him to the Pirates. The Pirates weren't going to have to deal with it because his contract was going to expire at the end of the year. Before the drug trial was going to start, he was going to be gone anyway.
Interesting, though, because...
And then I was out of the way, so the Pirates didn't have to trade me and put up with the anguish that was going to come.
You wonder if they couldn't have come up with somebody else, though, T, because as fate would have it, Al Holland finishes the year in '85, and then the drug trials, and then they parade all these players into the courthouse in downtown Pittsburgh.
Right.
It's national television.
Well,
all these players coming in and out of these trials in Pittsburgh, and one of theirs is Holland.
Go a little bit deeper, right? Candelario took me into this behind the scenes.
Well, but speaking of Candelaria, John Candelaria, I know you know this.
Oh.
He would end up. Joe Brown, the former general manager of the Pirates, was called upon as an interim GM to come in. He was well respected. They fired Pete Peterson, but there was a whole maelstrom going on in terms of the talk about how things have gotten away from the Pirate clubhouse, including Pete Peterson, the GM, a really good GM. He set up the '79 team,
Right.
World Series. Publicly, Candelaria comes out and calls him a bozo. Our general manager is a bozo. And then Joe Brown comes in and trades Candelaria and a bunch of others.
Well, he calls him a bozo. He called him nepotism because his son
that's
was
right.
the bullpen coach.
That's right, Rick Peterson.
Rick was, and it turned out to be a great pitching coach, by the way.
Yeah,
So, no
That's a
offense
great
to
call.
Rick, but Candy. Well, things weren't
not much
good,
of a filter.
And Candy wasn't one who handled things not being good very well.
He's got one speed.
No, that's right.
He didn't want to be a part of something that wasn't real good. He was used to being part of something that was good, and he was probably in the same boat then when he got traded as I was. That it turned out to be a bonus,
Yes.
and he got out before it really got ugly, and we got out. We didn't have to end up on the 100.
Right.
100 loss season.
You were going to say something about Candelaria telling you something.
Yeah, he went into depth about how crazy that was and told me different stories. We'll have to have him on sometime, see if he'll share some of it. But, what was that like, Teak? I mean, it's obvious, it couldn't have been just in Pittsburgh. It was probably everywhere where things were evident, but it was just it just got out of control here. And I know you got to leave, but, those drug trials, that's nuts. Most people, especially my age, don't even have a clue that happened. They think about the Bonds and the McGuires and everything in the steroid era, but they don't think about the 85, 86 era.
The only reason Pittsburgh became a central place for it was because the trials were held here. I mean, it was throughout baseball.
Right. It usually is.
It was the cocaine. There was a lot of stuff going on that really, I can tell you honestly, I knew there were some things going on, but I didn't understand that it was as big as it was, as widespread as it was.
And how that
throughout the whole game.
And how that happens is you do what you got to do, right? If you're not a part of the little clique that's doing that, right, you're not going to know.
Right.
Because guys are very secretive when it comes to their personal life.
Apparently, this cocaine was around everywhere. I never had anybody ever come up and they offer me. I kind of feel deprived. Nobody ever thought enough of me to ask me if I wanted some cocaine.
Yeah.
It was everywhere.
Instead of a rubber band, you want to be a slingshot today?
But this was kind of a central location. That's another thing. It was being run through
the courthouse in Pittsburgh.
How did
everybody was here?
How did that happen? Why Pittsburgh?
Because there was stuff going on. They had somebody involved in the clubhouse, easy access.
Okay.
A kind of a well-known personality that was kind of being a go-between. It was.
Stay tuned on next.
Yeah, it was an absolute mess.
Yeah.
It was a mess.
That is a mess.
It was. it was legitimately totally larger than I had any concept. And I'm sitting right in the middle of it. And I had no idea about it.
Yeah. So
that just shows his character, right?
Which actually got to be scary, because later on, and this is one of the, you have those moments as a parent when all of a sudden something hits you and you go, wow. All this was going on all around Major League Baseball. I'm traveling, at least at that time, all around the National League. So I'm intermingling with all these people. Apparently there's stuff going on in the clubhouses. There's all kinds of stuff going on. And I have no clue. I am, turns out Rod Scurry, one of our left-handed relievers, was involved in it, and the cocaine ended up killing him.
Yeah, killing him.
He ended up dying.
One of the top. How about that left-handed reliever, Teak? How good was he?
He was excellent.
Incredible.
He was one of the best relievers around. But I'm sitting at home one night after this has all now come out, and I look at my wife, Linda, and we got our 4 little kids, and I'm going, if I'm sitting in the middle of this, and this is going on this bad, and I didn't recognize it, how am I going to know if something happens to one of the kids, if one of the kids gets involved in it?
Great point.
I mean, it was just one of those moments when it just hits you in the forehead, and you go, oh, my God, I feel totally helpless here. My own kids, it could happen to him, and I won't recognize it. And
That's a great call.
You're thinking of this monster as if something, oh, my God.
I know right away,
You'd see that.
Yeah.
I saw none of it.
The only thing that a player would know, and anybody around at that time would know, and how different times are, is that anybody was in and out of that clubhouse. Anybody. It was. Well,
there was no 9/11. There was no security.
Nothing. No security. Nothing. In and out of the clubhouse. People all over the place.
Friends.
Think about that compared to now.
Oh, it's night and day.
Yeah. I mean, it's changed completely now.
Yeah.
You got to have a credential to go anywhere in the ballpark now. You could come off the street and if you knew the guy that was guarding outside the club, you want to go inside and see somebody?
Get on in there.
Go right in. I mean, there were people in our clubhouse constantly. And of course, we were good. We were popular. Everybody had friends, and there were people in and out of there constantly.
Yeah.
And I imagine every other clubhouse was the same way.
So, Teak, you spend the time with the Phillies, and then you end up with a chance to. Were you a Reds fan growing up?
Oh, yeah.
I figured
absolutely.
you were. Yeah, a Cincinnati guy.
Ted Abernathy. We talked about him in the last show.
That's right.
I don't throw underhand unless I've got a 10-year-old memory of Ted Abernathy.
So emulating
and what a memory
one
you
of his
have,
favorite Reds players, and you end up finishing your career. And how neat was that?
It was really cool. Unfortunately, Pete Rose was the manager of the team that year, and that year in spring training, like the 3rd or 4th day of pitchers and catchers, is when the whole thing broke with him and the gambling and the Bart Giamatti and all that.
Talk about crazy.
So that kind of put a
Jeez,
shadow
over
the whole thing
Teak?
for the team.
Yeah, really.
But
then we bombed.
Personally, for myself, the Reds are such a traditional organization, very seldom change anything. So I was literally wearing a uniform that was almost identical to my heroes when I was a kid.
Oh, that's cool.
Ted Klaczewski, Gus Bell, Wally Post, Frank Robinson, Roy McMillan, Johnny Temple, Joe Nuxall, who grew up right around where I
didn't know that.
living.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, these guys.
So it's like a boyhood moment.
I mean, just a flashback. My little league uniform turned into a big league uniform. And the same little kid.
Did he give you a fire
that
back?
was 6'4" now. Was still that same little kid in that uniform, getting to play with his favorite team when he was this high.
That had to give you some fire, right? That's special. That's really special.
It is special, and I think every player who ever gets a chance to go back and play where they grew up, whether it's in their middle of their career, whenever it is. Neil Walker, obviously, the obvious example around here. That moment has to be so special because, you idolized that team, those players for so long. They were your heroes. And to actually now sit down, and it's almost overwhelming to think that, wow, Now I'm that little kid's hero.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. I tried that with the Braves.
Yeah.
That's
I
hard
don't
to
know if I want that responsibility because those guys were so big. I can't be that big.
That was 1989.
Wow. 1989, my final year.
And you mentioned that the stuff was going around with Rose at that time.
Right.
Now, he still managed the team part of that year.
Team for the
Was there
entire
whispers
year.
of that? Like, did anybody see that coming, or did it just come out of the blue?
It came out of the blue. We actually,
I've always wondered that.
Danny Jackson was on that team.
Wow.
And
A
he
former
and I
Pirate.
were living in a motel over in Lakeland and training in Plant City. So we would ride over to Plant City every day to go to spring training in the morning. And like I said, we're 3 or 4 days into pitchers and catchers. The regular players, most of them aren't even there yet. We drive into the parking lot, okay, big deal. The third or fourth day, we drive into the parking lot. There are satellite trucks everywhere.
Wow.
The whole parking lot is filled up with these satellite trucks, and all these satellites are set up. What the hell is going on? I mean, the real players aren't even here yet.
Wow.
And it was because the news had broken that morning about Bart Giamatti and, investigating Pete Rose and the gambling.
Wow.
Now, I'll take this one step further, and then we can drop it and move on. But I got to give Pete Rose, I will never agree with what he did. Obviously, the biggest rule in baseball is you don't gamble on baseball. That, and we all knew that from the first day, signing every clubhouse. Pete Rose, during that entire season, he would not go out on the field for batting practice. He would stay in his office. He would stay away so that all that circus that was going on around him would not bother us as far as us playing the game.
Wow. He took the heat.
We didn't. We had a ton of guys that were injured. He did everything else. Well, he didn't take the heat. I mean, he was taking his own heat.
Well, yeah, but he didn't pile it on you guys.
He did not allow. He let the coaches run the team, and we went out and played. Now, we didn't play real well because a bunch of guys got hurt. And in fact, one writer, I only played until the All-Star break. I retired right after the All-Star break. But one of the writers had come up to me and asked me about, is this whole thing with Pete affecting the team and the play, the way we're playing? I said, I wish we could say that. We're just not playing very well, and we got a lot of guys that are hurt. That part of it, you cannot blame it on Pete.
That's really cool. I mean, that shows how much he loves the game, even though he did some things he shouldn't.
As much trouble as he was in, as much as he was going through, he respected the game enough to not to take away from us what the game, the enjoyment and what we were doing as our careers, and just keep it to himself.
That's a side most people probably have never heard.
Well, Teek, what had you heard, Teek, from the veterans who had played for him before '89, the previous couple of years, in terms of what kind of a manager he was? Did everybody seem to respect him as a manager?
Yeah, I think so. I think part of it he was a player manager.
Yeah,
and then the other part he was just managing. But I think the players respected him. I think they don't know anything about what was going on, behind the scenes. But as far as knowing the game, running the game, and all that other stuff, I think I think the players respected him a lot. One other little quick story from when he was playing. He was playing, I believe, with Montreal at the time when I was with Philadelphia, and he was just playing. He wasn't a player manager yet. And, he was a player manager. We're playing the Reds and we're playing him in Philadelphia. He is a player manager.
Okay.
And some young kid's out on the mound, and I have to bat because we're leading and I'm going to stay in the game. And he walks me on like 5 pitches. So we get down to first base, and I'm taking my lead off of first base, my little, 4.5-foot lead. And he's
where your belly button hits the base.
And Pete's apparently he's walked a couple other guys before me, so the bases are low. So Pete's playing in front of me. So he throws the first pitch, and I looked at Pete and I says, "Pete, who is this kid?" So he makes another pitch, and Pete turns around, and looks at me, and says, "You don't have to worry about it. He won't be here very long if he walked you." The next day, he was sent out.
He was gone. He had those managerial instincts early on, Pete Rose did. Do you think he should be in the Hall of Fame, even now, posthumously?
Absolutely not.
No. Well, you stick by that. Huh.
He broke the most sacred rule in the game of baseball.
No, good for
we
you.
all were held to that standard, and we knew it from day one, and absolutely not.
Even with gambling such a part of sports now in baseball.
That's fine.
Huh.
The rules when we played
are the rules.
were
That's
you
good
don't
for
do
you.
it. You know, does baseball maybe have to take a look and change those rules because of the fact that they are actually now associated with, of course, back then it was all illegal gambling.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have legal gambling. You have the online stuff.
Yeah, they're making a fortune off of it. Yeah.
Everybody's got a phone.
Yeah.
You know, Major League Baseball's advertising. They're involved in it. They're partners. All this other stuff.
Cincinnati has a sports bet in their stadium.
They have it in the stadium. So
Believe it or
I,
not.
you know, I think that there's going to come a time very soon where Major League Baseball has to look at this and say, hey, wait a minute. You know, maybe we have to kind of change. You can't let the players bet on the game because, you know, the idea is it was the Black Sox scandal in fixing the games and getting involved with the gamblers. But how long is it going to be before Major League Baseball is going to get questioned about umpires' calls, just like the NFL is now about referees' calls, because of the outcome of the game being changed or the outcome of, you know, the over-under or whatever being changed.
Yeah, the insider
They
information
may
doesn't
have
go
to-
anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you that there were thousands and thousands of times that I'd be walking in and out of stadiums all over the country. Hey, Teak, how you doing today? Oh, I'm fine. How you doing? Good. Says, you know, Willie got hit last night. How's he feeling? Oh, he's okay.
People want that inside information any way they can get it.
It was the same answer every night.
Yeah, you have
oh,
to.
you pitched 3 innings last night. You going to be able to throw tonight? Oh, I think so. You know, it was every time, no matter what the question was, the answer was exactly the same because I knew what was out there, and I knew that I had to make sure that I protected myself against it.
Well, think about it.
So
If that
for
guy gets in
reason,
trouble,
no.
if that guy gets in
Good for
trouble,
you,
who are they
Teak.
going to say? I got the information from Teak. He was
Yeah.
my inside source.
Well,
Yeah.
they wouldn't even have to say that. I
Yeah.
mean, they
Just-
could trace it back and find out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Oh yeah,
It's
I
crazy.
mean, you know, somebody's going to give somebody up for.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're a big whale and they're little
No.
pond fish.
So Teak, you went to your hometown team, and then you said you retired at the All-Star break. You just knew it was time at that
Yeah,
point?
I actually went there. Murray Cook, who became the farm director after Pete Peterson,
Murray Cook was a
was the general manager of the Reds at the time.
former Pirate guy.
Former Pirate guy, yeah. He was actually my final couple of years in the minor leagues when Pete took over as the general manager. He was the farm director.
Ah, Pete Peterson became the GM of the Pirates, and then Murray
Murray
Cook was the farm director of the
assistant,
Pirates.
Became
Gotcha.
the farm director. Well, I get released by Philly.
And now Murray's
After
with the Reds.
Yeah, after the '88
Okay.
season, Murray's the general manager with the Reds.
Mm-hmm.
Calls me up during the winter, and he goes, "No, I'm 40. I'm just played at 41. I'm going to be 42 the next year." And I had an okay year. I didn't, you know, I'm obviously.
Were you an oddity? Was there many guys in their, 38 to 42 range season?
No.
Yeah, you were
at
still
that
an
time,
oddity.
when I retired, there was one person older than me in Major League Baseball. That was Nolan Ryan. He played for 5 more years and pitched 2 more no-hitters. He made the rest of us really look bad.
By the
But,
way, Teak threw 90 games at the age of 40 in 1987.
That's what
Buckle
we did.
up, you Pirates.
Yeah,
Let's
anyway.
go.
That's what we did.
So Murray Cook
But anyway,
calls you.
Murray calls me and he says, "Have you had any thoughts about playing one more year?" I said, "Well, I really hadn't. I kind of figured that 42 after 41 was done." Says, "Well, I got a couple guys in the minor leagues that are going to be setup guys in the big. They're going to be my setup guys in the big leagues next year that are young, and was wondering if you wanted to play one more year to come in and kind of, in the beginning of the season, take some of the tougher spots off of them and let them just kind of settle in and get their feet on the ground. And then, and teach them a little bit about relief pitching and whatever you can, and then help them away. And then as we move along through the season, we'll move them kind of up in the order and we'll move you back down in the order. And I would guess that if we were in a pennant race, I probably would have got released and you could have got bat or somebody that you needed. Well, I talked to Murray, and Murray and I are friends, and I said, yeah, okay, I think I can go one more year. So I did. So we go to spring training, and then the kids do really well. I start tailing off, and by the All-Star break, I can tell I'm heading for my second DL. Same thing as the year before. The rotator cuff is just worn out. So I call Murray up after the All-Star break, and I say, the kids are doing good. What would you say if I just retired? We have never had a summer vacation. It's the middle of July. Let me just retire and go. He says, if that's what you want to do, it's fine with me. You've done everything I've asked you to do, blah, blah, blah. So I retire. So although numerically the last year that I played was that year and the first year when I was only up for 28 days were the two worst years, number-wise, that I had in my career. But I was successful because those two kids were Rob Dibble and Norm Charlton.
Oh, the Nasty Boys.
Those two guys
the impact
came
left.
along with Randy Myers the next year were the Nasty Boys and ended up beating the Oakland A's, swept them in the World Series. So my last year was unsuccessful number-wise, but very successful in what the purpose of me being there was.
And that impact probably still hits home right here, right?
Oh,
Big
yeah.
time, yeah.
I mean,
because you impacted their lives forever.
That one, the two things other than, obviously the World Series and the games that I've saved in that, the two things that really stand out in my career, having been a closer, I know the value of the setup guy. Okay? That one right there, getting these two guys in a position where they could help them win a World Series the next year. And the year in Philadelphia, at the age of 40, you were just talking about, where I pitched 90 games, and Steve Bedrosian, our closer, won the Cy Young Award.
That's great.
Now, I will be honest now and tell you what I wouldn't have ever admitted then. There were some of those games that I was in the eighth inning with a 4-run lead that I just got a little wilder than I would have normally gotten. That by the time Bedrosian came in the ninth inning, it was a 3-run lead, and he got a save instead of an AFC. We were going nowhere.
A big assist from Teak.
This is honesty of a player that's done and doesn't have to deal with it anymore. But there were a couple times that we weren't going to go anywhere, and he had a chance.
I love that.
So
that's awesome.
A big assist from Teak.
Yeah.
Bedrosian. Bedrock.
Teed him up.
That's what the setup guy's job is to do.
Yeah.
Set it up for the closer.
Teak, so you really never had your opportunity to take it all in, knowing it was going to be your final year. Any regrets at all in that respect?
I guess I knew it was my final year.
Well, but
I literally, over the All-Star break, made the decision that it's time now. Because the situation was right. The kids were ready.
I love that. I mean, it seems like he has zero.
I wasn't. I had asked Willie once, right after he retired. I had asked Willie, I says, how do you know when it's time? And he just looked at me and said, Teak, you'll know.
Huh.
I agree.
You won't look forward. It's not how you're performing, although that's part of it. You can't perform the way you're used to performing. But he says, you just won't look forward to getting in the car and going to the ballpark every day like you did in the past. And I was at that point. I wasn't performing well. I wasn't really needed to teach them anymore. And there were days where I would have just at 3:30 rather stayed at home instead of getting in the car and going down to the ballpark.
Do you remember your last game or games at all? Did you think
Yeah,
back?
it was on a Sunday afternoon, and I took a loss.
You remember that one?
That's cemented
in Cincinnati?
It was right after it was the Friday, Saturday, Sunday after the or I guess it was back then. It was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday after the All-Star break. And on Sunday,
in Cincinnati.
In Cincinnati.
Okay.
And on Sunday, I took the loss in the game and didn't pitch very well, and that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And that's when I made the call on Monday to Murray and said, "Hey, would you mind if I retire?"
And not long after that, then you became a broadcaster. You did some.
You said you took a year off.
Took a year off, did some PR work with the Pirates,
and then got into.
Yeah, that was back before Steve was doing a lot of the broadcasting, so he was doing a lot of the PR work.
Okay.
Then he got back into the broadcasting, so then, there was kind of a little void there that they didn't do nearly as much then as they do now as far as PR-wise. So I just kind of, whatever they needed, I did, and did that for a year, and then the next year is when I got the call from the Phillies about, filling in and doing that.
What about Pirates broadcasting? How did that come about then?
Yeah, how did you get back here?
Well, there was a lot of steps in between. I did the Phillies for 7 years, and then they wanted me to move to Philadelphia full time because I was doing more. I was doing about 85 or 90 games a year by then, and they were switching networks and stuff like that.
Yep.
They were redoing their system, and they wanted me. I didn't have to do anything in the off season in Philadelphia. They wanted me to move to Philadelphia and do that, and the kids were in high school. They're in their activities. I didn't want any part of that. So I told him, I said, nah, I think I'll just stang it up. That'll be fine. And then they got Larry Anderson came in and a couple other guys, and they took care of it all over there. So then, I went through a bunch of different things. A couple of years, I didn't do anything. Then I did the Wild thing.
Tell us about the Washington Wild thing.
Did the Washington Wild
How'd that
things.
came about?
They just called me one day and said, hey, by the way, we're putting together a baseball team over here. Well, I heard nothing of it. Says, we need somebody to run the baseball operations. Said, would you be interested?
The general manager of the Washington Wild things.
Director of baseball operations.
I'm sorry, director of baseball ops.
General manager has responsibilities on the financial side.
You didn't have to pull tarp or anything either, did you?
No, I didn't drag infield.
Okay.
I did drag infield, but I didn't pull tarp.
What was that experience like being with the Wild things?
It was kind of neat because of my history about the fact that I was never the guy that was ever wanted.
You understood these guys.
I understood who these kids were and what they were looking for a chance and what that chance meant to them. And initially I'm going,
Amen.
What do I want to do this for? But then all of a sudden it's like, I got a chance to give a whole bunch of kids a chance that I would have loved to have had when I was, independent leagues didn't exist then.
Yeah.
So I have a chance to help these kids maybe have a chance to try to get, and we got a couple guys in the minor leagues. I don't think we ever got anybody to the big leagues, but we got some guys back in minor league systems and stuff like that.
That's awesome. He's giving back to the game.
That was the
so much.
incentive for me to do it because there were so many of me out there that were either overlooked or had been in the minor leagues and got hurt and got released, looking for another chance.
You got to have the chance.
Yeah, and
that's the hardest part
league,
sometimes.
In the Frontier League at that time, I don't know how it is now, the maximum age was 27. So you couldn't have veteran players that had played
I think
in the
it's
big
open-ended
leagues.
now.
Yeah, so it was all young kids. These are kids out of college or kids that had played a couple of years in the minor leagues and got released. So it was just a second
How many
chance
years
for
with the
them.
Wild things?
I was just there for the first 2 years.
And then was it right after that TV? You came back to TV, the Pirates?
I think there was another couple of years off, and then the TV opportunity presented
How'd that
itself.
present itself? It's a natural, just wondering how it happened.
Well, I was going down to which TV opportunity? We were talking about the Pirate opportunity now. Okay. Yeah, we already talked about the Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Okay. The Pirate opportunity. I used to go down to spring training every year for spring training, and myself, Bill Verdon, Sangy, who else was it? Maz.
Okay.
There were
As
four
guest
of us that were down
instructors.
there almost
And
every year.
let me
Guest
tell you,
instructors.
talk about a cool moment. Going to spring training and get to know you guys, that was awesome. It was a difference maker when I came to the Pirates.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget it. And
Just the fact that these former Pirate
'cause,
greats were hanging around, right?
T gave me advice to just be who I was and trust the process and put his arm around me. And didn't really know who he was, didn't know a lot about his career, but I went home and looked him up. Same thing with Bill Verdon. You guys were just normal dudes in uniform, and you kind of were off with a little bit of a shadow or an aura, and then you kind of come in and go out. And there's something special about that because you had our backs. When we're fighting to make the team, which I had to in 12, I'm there and I'm fighting, and you just gave me a little piece of advice. Verdon gave me a little piece of advice, and that made me feel like I was being seen, like you're just talking about. Because when you are the guy fighting, a lot of times the staff pulls back because they don't want to show favorites. But you guys came up, and Manny every single day, Poppy, you got to do it like this. And he would try. Obviously, it didn't move very well at the time, but it meant so much, and I wish we still had that. But you guys had a presence.
In all of our careers at some point, we were that guy.
Yeah, exactly.
We had to make that first team.
Yes.
Or we had those years.
You had to fight to get there.
So, and we didn't have anybody to help us. We were on your own. Figure it out.
And that's why they were there. And that was the coolest thing.
But it was cool for us, too.
I can imagine now being on this side and wanting to get back to the players constantly.
To get in a uniform and be back on the field again during spring training.
It felt good,
was
didn't
so
it?
much of your part for, Well, in our case with the kids, right after the first of the year, we'd go down to Florida. I'd, go run on the beach a couple times or something like that and get ready for spring training, and then, off we went. And then, that was part of it every year. Well, then you don't have that for a while. Then you get invited to go back, and even if you're not, you're not doing a whole lot, but you're there and you're around the guys, and so that's an exciting part to get involved in. So anyway, getting back to the broadcasting thing, I used to take my RV down.
Yes.
Lived in my RV.
Hey, I'm an RV. I was an RVer once too.
For 6 weeks, I lived in my RV, went to spring training, go back and forth. The camp wasn't very far at all from Pirate City. So spring training's over with. I'm driving back, and I'm on the way back. I left a couple days early, like 3 or 4 days before camp was over. I think there's like 3 road games at the end and the flight to maybe going someplace to play somebody next official game. So I'm already on my way home, and I get a call on my cell phone in the RV. Oh. Now, this was not my little bitty cell phone.
Yeah, this is the big thing. Yeah.
When it's it's a cell phone.
Yeah, it's attached.
Yeah.
It's like, hello.
I don't think it was a brick, but it was close to the brick. It was relatively close to the brick. And the phone rings, and it was, at that point in time, let's see, it was FSN or was...
No, probably. Geez, that could have been Fox Sports
What derivation we were.
Paul Kasuth? No?
I can't remember now. It was past KBL. I know KBL was out of the way.
It was probably Fox.
I think it was Fox Sports.
It could have been Fox. And they called me up, and Sean McClintock is on the phone. He goes, we're looking for somebody to be the analyst on the pregame shows. Are you interested? And I said, well, hadn't thought about it, but yeah. He says, can you get home in time, because we're opening at home.
Uh-huh.
Can you get home in time? Or no, we may have been opening on the road. I can't remember. Can you get home in time? Are you going to be home in time for opening day? Because we got a show to do. He says, yeah, I'll be there the day before or whatever. He says, well, if you're interested in it, it's your job.
Wow.
So, I had not, at that point in time in my life, had not met Rob King. I did not know Rob. I mean, I had met him, but I didn't know Rob King.
Yeah.
How cool you're in the RV.
Driving in the RV. Yeah, I think I can get there in time. So I get home a day ahead of time. I says, well, do you want to, this is I'm kind of going back to my first broadcasting job with the Phillies.
Yep.
I says, well, you want me to come down and we'll go over the format or, do whatever? Nah, just come on in. We'll just
wing it.
We'll just do it. So,
Yes.
I mean, I had 2 broadcasting jobs in my life, and never one of them did we talk about what we were going to do on the set before I actually sat down on the set.
Is that what they're supposed to do? Because they did that to me too.
Yeah, I think it might work.
Yeah, it's just like,
It works.
punking you, yeah.
It
works.
Yeah.
Hey, you go to your first call to the big leagues.
It took me 4 years to know there was a rundown.
You get a meeting for 2 days before your first call to the big leagues before you go out and play.
Right.
Yeah,
That's right.
whatever, yeah.
Go play, kid.
Yeah, go ahead. Go get them.
Go play.
But I literally was driving back from spring training, get a cell phone call, and 3 days later, I'm now doing pregame shows for however many. I think we're doing 125 games at that point in time. And then eventually, about 3 or 4 years in, then we weren't doing, or they didn't have a analyst on the postgame show. 3 or 4 years in, I ended up starting doing both pre and postgame shows, and did that for the rest of the 10-year period.
Incredible. And then a little hiatus for a new heart.
That was
right.
That was in the middle of it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there was a little break here. In fact, when I went to the hospital, I knew I had problems, and they put in the pump. I was wearing the pump. You couldn't see it on the set because it was below the desk, but it was a battery pack on your hip. It was hooked up through a wire that was actually running your heart.
A battery pack.
I'm walking down the street.
Did you have rechargeable batteries at least?
Yeah.
Oh, golly.
Better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, during the day. At night, you plug yourself into the wall.
So you're like a Tesla.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You plug yourself into the wall.
You're the first electric car. Got it. Wow.
Well, you had batteries too.
Yeah.
So if you had to go to the bathroom, you didn't have to take the cord with you. You could leave it there. But so anyway, we're doing this. We're doing the post-game shows and all this stuff. And then it's like it just kept morphing itself into more and more and longer and longer. And it was just, the perfect way, almost perfect way to end my baseball life was 10 years of back to where I started, doing pirate baseball,
So
talking about pirate baseball, involved with the fans, trying to teach them, what I had learned over all these years about, same thing you're doing, about how the game is played, why you do this.
You see it differently, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the biggest compliment I've gotten most often is, you taught me so much about the game of baseball
Amen.
that I did not know.
Yep.
And that's coming from men, that's coming from women, that's coming from kids.
Yep. It keeps you going, that's for sure.
So that's the gratifying part of having done that.
And one thing I want to bring up, since I preceded you, never could wear your shoes. We're not the same size, but you're teak. But the family aspect over there, I didn't realize I was going to get that with the broadcast group, with Brownie and those guys, and then also with Rob King and everybody that's behind the scenes.
Oh, especially the guys
family,
behind the scenes.
Right, like the family there gave you that team aspect too. When you don't have it on the field,
Right,
you need it, right?
You've had it forever.
Right, now
It's
you
been
have it
part
again.
of your life, and
right?
you get it again, and don't expect to get it.
Exactly.
You expect,
exactly.
this guy over here, well, he makes tapes and pictures, and they plug that in the show. And this guy over here, he goes into a booth and reads a script, and then they plug that into the show. You have no idea until you're involved with it how the interaction is amongst the people on a TV team, especially a TV team.
It's one heartbeat.
I think
no pun
radio is
intended.
probably a little easier because you've just got your
there aren't as many people
booth.
involved.
There's 4 or 5 people involved.
You've
You're
got
doing
your
video,
engineer.
you're doing graphics, you're doing all kinds of stuff on TV.
The people behind the scenes TV, you talked about that, they're magical.
And you and I and Rob King, the people at home think we know all that. We did all that. Because we're the ones that see. That's what I always felt bad about. Nobody at home ever knew a face of anybody that put all that stuff together and made us look that good and that knowledgeable and made the show run so smooth. The producers, the directors,
they bring our
everybody.
knowledge to life, which is remarkable.
Yeah, it's just, and like you said, the team aspect of it is just.
That's something I kind of knew, but I'd never been in corporate America.
Right.
I'd started a business and kind of moved on from that. But like when I got there, I didn't see that coming. And then when you came back, or anybody came back that had been there before, put up the birthday signs, all of it, like you could tell it was a unit that was just different. Mm-hmm. It was really cool.
Well, you said people behind the scenes. Leonard Lee, our producer director here,
The
guys
Wizard.
like that. Yeah, the Wizard.
Some of the nicknames we couldn't use. we had a couple of guys that we
could not use.
Yeah.
Even on a podcast, can't use.
Well,
it.
every now and then I throw out the nickname.
Dave Ricchini, I'm talking to you.
Yeah. Hey, can I tell you a quick story about Dave Ricchini? So he just left Sportsnet, and I got him a little gift. It was a pair of socks that said "the greatest ass of all the asses." Okay, and it's kind of a running joke because a couple years ago, Dave got promoted as Doug's right-hand man. Doug was our general manager / executive producer with Sean. But I got him a golden cock, and I put it at his desk. It's the only thing he took home. Yeah, it made me like I was a great friend right there because I love Dave, and I'm going to miss him a ton. And you worked with Dave. He produced for you.
Well, I was a little classier than you.
Yeah.
I used to come in with giant bags of Swedish fish.
I've heard this.
I was the food
I've heard
guy.
this. Yeah.
I was the food guy.
Yeah.
And Roger Lenhart, who was the executive producer at the
Roger
time,
brought me in, yeah.
Yeah. He had his own private bowl of fish that I had a sign on it. Nobody was allowed to touch these except Roger Lenhart. Everybody else can come to my desk and reach into my jar and get fish if they want to.
Yeah.
Roger had his own fish.
I love it.
So it's the same thing.
Yeah, you got to take care of them because they're taking care of you. But I thought I'd tell that story because
I've seen
it was
Ricchini
a little
walk out with
Clubhouse.
that rooster. He loved that. It was one of his favorite
it was a
things.
rooster. Yeah.
Teak, how about when you came back from the heart transplant? In a few weeks, you're throwing out the ceremonial first pitch at the wild card game in 2014.
Yeah,
is that right?
Wow.
Well, that was you were like Superman. You just had a new heart put in, and like a couple weeks later, you're up on the mound at PNC Park.
Well, I wasn't up on the mound.
Well, close. You were approaching the mound.
I was maybe halfway.
You're a few steps in front of the mound.
Yeah.
You don't have to ruin a good story.
I was
Superman.
I was actually past the point of the biggest thing is don't bounce it.
Yes.
So I didn't care.
Yeah. Just being out there.
After you get a new heart, you don't care if you bounce.
Yeah, exactly.
It's okay.
Just being there, right?
But yeah, it was an amazing time. I mean, obviously there was the lead up to it, and then where I just basically disappeared from TV, unbeknownst to anybody, and there was no reason to give. Rob did the greatest job in the world of, Ken Maka came in and filled in for me, and nobody knew why I was gone, and that was just amazing because I'm going through what I'm going through. We had gotten to the point where the pump that I had just wasn't good enough, and
It's because you have a huge heart.
well, I did have a huge
No, I mean,
heart.
I
It literally
truly-
was. They said it was twice the size it was
Of course
supposed
it was.
to be.
Yeah, you
Because-
gave so much of it.
Yeah.
Well,
It said I
no, it
needed-
wasn't because I gave so much of it. I beat it up so bad that it just got that. But anyway,
He hates a compliment, doesn't he?
Yes, he
Hates
does.
it.
Yep.
I don't deserve compliments. But anyway, so I go in and I have the transplant. And that's when the news finally breaks that I've had this heart problem and I get a transplant. I'm in the hospital for 8 days. I unfortunately did not break the record was 7 days to get out after a heart transplant. I got out on the 8th day, so I was still yell at my surgeon every once in a while for holding me up for a day. I didn't tie that
Didn't break the
record.
record. Yes. Tie it.
But then 28 days later, after the heart transplant, so 8 of them are in the hospital. The next 20 days at home. Well, it was a little bit before that. I get a call from the ball club. Would you come over and throw out the first pitch at the wild card game? And I'm going, there's no way. So I just had, obviously it was a big story. Everybody knew about it. This would be great, but there's no way. So I call up the head of surgery over at AGH and Dr. Morale, and I said, they called me, they asked me, you're going to tell me no, but whatever. And he said, no. He says, you can do it. He says, there's only one condition. I said, what's that? He says, because of your chest being opened up and having stitches all the way up and down the front of your chest, you can't throw like you used to. You can't throw underhand and throw this way because he says you're liable to pop your whole chest open and there'll be stuff laying all over the infield. So said you have to throw overhand like a normal person.
Wow.
So Dr. Morale, my new pitching coach at the age of 65 or whatever the hell I was, has now told me that I have to throw overhand, which I had to spent my whole life getting away from.
Yeah.
Now I got to go back and throw overhand. But he said I could do it, and which. Number one, to shock the hell out of me that he would allow me. Number two, I mean, this is, the wild card game. The wild card game is now, this is what, the second wild card game or the third one?
The second of the three, yeah.
This is the second of the three. So the first one has set the expectations so high because it was so great. And so, I'm thinking, okay, everybody in town is excited because we're back in the wild card game again. Well, when they introduced me and I walk out, because I don't think it was very well known that I was going to do it.
They tried to keep it a secret.
When I walked out, the reaction from the people in the ballpark, the full house obviously, was just overwhelming. I mean, I start choking up just talking about it now because I'm thinking, okay, some of these people saw me play. A whole lot of them never saw me play.
Right.
Yes, they've heard the news 3 weeks ago that this happened. But that reaction was just so overwhelming. And then, to actually be back on the field and throw a baseball to Jared Hughes, who actually requested to be the catcher because he and I had developed a relationship
Back in
during
spring training.
Everything goes full circle.
How about
It
that?
does. Yep.
So he was the catcher for it.
That almost makes me cry.
Wow.
And then, then obviously I short hop it to him, just It's because they made me throw overhand. If I could have thrown underhand, I could have.
You had a little movement to it,
but,
too.
It was just the wrong angle to downslope. I didn't have the right release point. There's, I'm sure.
All kinds of stuff you could.
We'll break that down.
That's
what we do.
We'll get a pitching coach somewhere and analyze why I didn't get it there. But no, that was, number one, it was an honor that they asked me. Number two, the reaction of everybody in the ballpark, including, which I didn't see, was the reaction of the current players. My nephew, who was there, he's the one that told me, said, it was prior to the game, the guys are out running their sprints and now getting ready to play a wild card game. And all the guys on the field at that time stopped doing what they were doing and watched. And he mentioned in particular Kutch was one of them.
Yep.
And, just that, the whole thing, the whole sequence, going from you don't know if you're going to live or die or if you're going to get through this transplant operation, all the way to within 30 days, you're standing in the middle of PNC Park in a full house. I mean, you talk about going from nowhere to somewhere. That was just unbelievable about that whole thing. Your
impact has been far and wide from the player aspect. So I could speak on that probably for hours on, you and the group of men that surround the Pittsburgh name. Your impact has been phenomenal. That's why Kutch stopped. Because Bill Verdon, because of Bill Mazeroski, because of you, because you were there. You were there in the toughest moments in some guy's career. You were the guy that just came up and patted him on the back and probably sat there. Because that happened to me. And it didn't happen to me in Pittsburgh, but it happened to me somewhere else. But it happened because I knew that you were the guys to open up to. I knew you were the guys that could see the tough.
It happened because the guys before us did the same thing for us.
Yeah. And I've
got a time, where we were talking earlier about, in 74, I come up for 28 days. I stink. I get sent back to minor leagues. I get dropped off the roster.
And you think it's over then, right? You're just like, what am I going to do now?
I mean, I'm done. And all of a sudden, circumstances, I get another chance in 75 to come back to the big league. So I'm down in Charleston. When Steve Blass is going through the worst thing you can possibly go through in his life.
Full circle.
Steve Blass is the one who took me aside and said, he knew what I'd done last year, that I'd been up. And he didn't tell me directly. He told me something that Don Osborne, who was still the pitching coach at the time, who was his pitching coach, had told him. He says, just go up there, throw it over the plate. The hitters will let you know if it's good enough or not. And I went back with it. I didn't. They weren't the big league hitters anymore. They weren't the guys that you had to make a perfect pitch or else they're going to hit the ball out of the ballpark. Throw it over. They'll let you know if it's good or not.
They'll tell you everything you need to know.
And that's exactly what I did, and that was the total difference between the time before and the time after. So
it's a sentence, by the way.
Anything that I passed on to you or anyone else like that during my times during spring training was just me passing on what Steve Blass had done for me, or so many other guys when I first came up. The veteran teammates when I first came up.
It's incredible.
You hear the stories about Doc Ellis and what a character he was and all this other stuff. He went out of his way more probably than anybody else on that team when I first came up, even in 74 when I wasn't very good, of going out of his way. And he came over to my locker one day and he says, "You're a sinker baller, I'm a sinker baller." He says, "Anytime you want to know about any of these hitters in this league, you come and ask me. I'll tell you what I know about, all the different guys and how they approach a sinker ball pitcher." And, so you put that with Blass, you put that with, numerous other guys. We're not doing anything else that somebody, and you did it, you're doing it for somebody else now. I mean, that's part of the beauty of the game and the team sport and what makes it so special. It's not just 25 guys. It's the ones that were before them or the veterans that are with them, helping
Amen.
them to get there, and then you feeling the responsibility to pass it on to the next group.
Amen.
And that's, that's one of the most gratifying things you can get out of being a professional baseball player.
The rubber band man,
Rubber
Kent
band man.
Tekulve. Teak,
Teak,
you are the greatest
Teak, you're the best.
for
I'll
being
drink
on
to
Hold
that.
My Cutter. We'll drink to that.